Hi, I'm Katie from the CraftyBlogstalker.com, and I am sure you have seen those beautiful inspirational quotes and sayings with the beautiful watercoloring behind. Well, now I'm going to show you how you can make your very own. For starters, you want to make sure that you're using watercolor paper. Watercolor paper will hold the water much better than the standard white cardstock. So make sure that you're using watercolor paper. And then you'll also need to use a stamped image. And I'm going to be using this Be Awesome from this stamp set. And then I'll also use a Versamark ink pad and some white embossing powder. And then for my ink, I am going to be using re-inkers. Now these, you can purchase these at your craft store. It's what you use to refill your ink pads for stamping, and that's the ink that I'm going to use. And then of course I will need a paintbrush and just a glass of water for rinsing. So I've cut my sheet down to 4 by 6. And I've already got my image mounted on my clear block. So I'm going to bring in my Versamark, and I'm just going to ink up my stamp and then stamp it down. Now Versamark is really pretty much clear, so I won't be able to see the ink on my paper, but it is there. So there I have stamped, and now I'm going to bring in this little catch tray for my embossing powder. And I'm just going to sprinkle some of my embossing powder right over my stamped image. And then to get all of the excess off, you just kind of tap it, and you can even flick the back there if you need. Get all that extra off. Now I am going to bring in my heat gun, and the heat gun will heat up this embossing powder and give it a nice glossy texture to it. I love using embossing powder even when I'm not watercoloring. It's such a fun product to use on paper crafting. So now you can kind of see the Be Awesome there. It's kind of given it that glossy texture. So now what I'm going to do is bring in a piece of thick cardstock to protect my surface so I don't get ink on my surface. And I've actually already put some drops of ink into this little paint holder here. So I'll bring in my water, and I've got my paintbrush. So now, for starters, the first thing you want to do is just get your surface wet. So, and don't worry, you kind of want to use a lot of water. So just get that surface nice and wet. And then I'm going to pick up my darkest first, which is over here. And I'm just going to kind of, I love watching it do that. Paint it over there, and then paint some over here as well. And then I'm going to rinse my brush and pick up some of my lighter color and put that there in the center and kind of work them in together. And you'll see that as I paint that where I embossed with that clear embossing powder, it will not let the paint stick to it. So it just pushes it right away. So now I'm going to let this dry for just a little bit. It's all dry, and now you can see how totally awesome this Be Awesome is quote. Then you can even put it in a frame so it looks something like this, and it is something that you can put on your mantle, on your desk, on your nightstand table, anywhere where you need a little reminder that you need to be awesome. Isn't that gorgeous? So what would your watercolor saying say? I would love for you to tell me your favorite inspirational quote. While you're here, make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel so you don't miss out on any of my upcoming tutorial videos. And I also have an email newsletter that I would love for you to be a part of. And as always, you can find me at thecraftyblogstalker.com. Thanks for joining me today.